Hello, this is Dave, W7UUU, and today we're with Nick Winter, K7MO. So go ahead and take it away, Nick.
Well, hi, folks. I've been a ham for over 50 years, and this is it's been the best thing that I ever did. It's gotten me into my work. I've met so many people and gotten to know so many people through ham radio. It's great. I started out a long time ago doing, well, actually talking about it. And my father finally told me, he says, look, you learn the damn code or shut up. And so I learned the code. And one good thing is that he bought me a set of records down at C&G Electronics called the Revolutionary New World Method of Learning Code by a guy named Russ Farnsworth. Now back then, nobody knew who Russ Farnsworth was. Now we have the Farnsworth method. And the way I learned code was the Farnsworth method, where the characters are sent rather rapidly and spaced out to equate to 5 or 13 words per minute or whatever it was. And so I thought, I'll learn this code and then I'm done. I'm not doing code anymore. I found out I liked it. And I also found out that I didn't have the money to buy any kind of a phone transmitter, so I was stuck on code and had to get a VFO then. So I got an old VFO and was able to get down in the general extra class CW portions. Once I upgraded from novice, I passed technician. Didn't need to do that, and got a general, and I think I got the advanced. I think I took the advanced at the same time.
What was your first radio as a novice?
My first radio as a novice was a Johnson Viking 2. Now the story behind that is my cousin Bob, who was handicapped. He had polio. To me, he wasn't handicapped. He just couldn't walk. But he had an interest in ham radio way back, probably before I was born. And he had a Johnson Viking 2 transmitter, which was a kit, and he never finished it. And he also had a Holocrafters SX71 receiver. And when I got my novice license, he was absolutely thrilled. And we were kind of buddies. He was my mom's age. He was kind of like a second cousin. But we used to like to talk about all kinds of technical things. And he ran a logging truck business out of Buckley, Washington. And he made me an offer I couldn't refuse. He says, Nick, he says, I got the Viking 2 and it needs to be finished. He says, if you take it home and finish it for me, I'll let you use it. How could you turn down that? So the only problem with that is he could not find the meter. So here I'm with a transmitter that has no meter, so I don't know how to measure anything. And the meter wasn't a 0 to 1 milliamp job like you could find a lot of places. It was a 0 to 5, which were pretty rare. So anyway, I dinked around with that for a while, and I finally decided, I want to build my own. And I did, out of a 1964 handbook, I think, 64, 65 in there. And I built a 6146 tube in the output and a 6AG7 transmitter. And I still have that to this day. And my receiver was a National NC190. I started out with a Lafayette kit and then graduated to the NC190, which my father bought. That was his radio. My father liked and enjoyed my getting into ham radio, so he also at the time was sitting and working for his professional engineering license. And but as soon as he got that done, he got into ham radio and took a course and so on and so forth. I think he took a course down at the Volk School with Jerry Seligman, W7BUN. Me, I didn't know anybody. I was a kid. I didn't have any transportation. So I basically did it all by myself. One fellow that did help out only with giving the tests and sending in and getting the novice information was another guy who worked in my father's office, next drafting board away, was Hugh, K7GSH, good sounding ham, and he helped and gave me my novice test. Now, way back before I had a ticket, I don't remember how exactly it all happened, but there was a guy down at the city of Tacoma where my father worked, and in the radio shop down there, and he gave my father a big box of Popular Electronics magazines. And my dad brought those home, and I read those from cover to cover. And one of the articles, the monthly articles, was a guy named John T. Fry wrote an article, or articles monthly, about two guys that are interested in electronics, and it was Carl and Jerry. And every month Carl and Jerry came out with a new adventure, and I read Carl and Jerry, and it was just kind of my thing. It was just great. And so Carl and Jerry are now out in print. You can buy the Carl and Jerry stories. They're out in print. And I think if you Google them on the internet, you'll find them. But that kind of just spurred me forward to do what I remember asking my father. I said, "Dad, what's a novice transmitter?" Because there was an article in one of the magazines. Build your first novice transmitter. He says, "Well, Nick, that's novice." Novice. Oh, okay, novice. Okay. But, if he hadn't told me that, it would have been novice. Anyway, I read those things cover to cover, and learned all about Allied Radio and Lafayette Radio, and got sent in for all the catalogs, Bernstein Appleby, BA catalog, and from looking at those, then I learned even more and more. I was able to actually see what kind of gear was being sold at the time and that sort of thing. And so that's how I got into it. I learned the code. Hugh Farmer, K7GSH, gave me the test, and I waited like a month or more. You folks now, when you go take a test at the radio club, and you find out within about a week, didn't happen back in 1967. It took about a month to find out, and that was one of the things that if you did not pass the test, the technical test, you'd have to pass the code first, and if you passed the code and you failed the technical test, you didn't know that you failed for a month later. And so anyway, I passed, and I got a packet of QSL cards. First time I knew what QSL cards were, but first time I'd actually seen one from the little print shop, I think down in Texas. And on the envelope that these cards came in, it was Joseph, that's my first name, Joseph Nicholas Winter, and Joseph Winter, WN7IVO. And I figured, oh, that's probably some kind of method they used. Well, the next day I got my novice ticket in the mail, and my call sign was WN7IVO. And I went, that was my call right there. Ha! Anyway.
How did they get it?
Well, they got it from a mailing from the FCC. They got it. Their mail just happened to go out a little bit faster than the FCC's mail. After that, I had the Viking 2 transmitter with no meter, had no idea what was going on. I had a VOM, and I kind of hooked that up to it so I could kind of see, loading and dipping, and all that's new to all you kids out there, loading and dipping and all that sort of stuff. But anyway, I was able to kind of do that. And I think I got the thing on the air at maybe 40, 50 watts, something like that. And so I got on and I called CQ and CQ and I called CQ. I had an antenna. I had an 80 meter inverted V, which my father and I put on the roof. And our lot, he bought a double lot when he built the house. And that antenna just fit perfectly. So anyway, the Viking 2 loaded into the antenna all right, and I called CQ a lot and so on and so forth. But finally, I got an answer from a guy up in Seattle. I think his name was Paul, if I remember correctly. And I had a good QSO. Had a real nice chat with him, and my code was pretty good for a novice, and so it was, and I just kept going with the code, because that's all I could do. Number one, but number two, I liked it. I really did like it, and there are a lot of guys, like I said earlier, that I'll learn that code just to get the license, and then I'm gone. I'm not doing that anymore. But I really did like it.
When did you get your extra?
That didn't happen until quite a bit later. I was an advanced for many years, many years, and then when I decided to get into the wonderful world of DXing and contesting and all, well, contesting wasn't that big a deal, but DXing, I knew I needed to have the extra class license, so I studied on that on my own, and didn't do any classes for that. And I got to a certain point, and I had a roaring cold. I was feeling pretty crappy, but all of a sudden, it was on a Sunday, and all of a sudden I said, I've got to go take this test now because I'm starting to forget the stuff in the beginning of the course, and so I had gotten one of the ARRL extra class courses or Q&A manuals. Anyway, so I actually went down to Centralia on a Sunday evening to take the test because I knew if I didn't take it today, I was going to forget stuff. And so I went down and took it and got the extra class license. And then, of course, the other thing that helps in DXing and contesting is a short call. So I started looking around and I found K7MO. Well, I used to hang around with a buddy named Clay Freinwald. He was K7CR. I actually taught him and a couple other people the code in a class, like kind of a small personal class. And he had gotten his extra, and I don't need an extra class license. Anyway, he had gotten his extra class license and gotten K7CR. So, and he worked at KMO radio, and that's kind of how I got into broadcasting. But anyway, I says, Clay, this K7MO, KMO, you should get that one. He says, well, no, I'm established. And, okay. So I said, well, if you don't mind, I'm going to go for it. And I did go for it, and I got it. And I have some special QSL cards. I send out a couple with old KMO people on the front of it. Vern Sawyer, one of their chief announcer. Excuse me. I think the chief engineer was Max Bice. You'll probably hear Max Bice, W7DK. Maybe some of the old timers will talk about Max. Max was at KTNT Television. He was the one that built the television station back in '53, and quite an interesting character. Anyway, so I got my extra class and I got my 2-letter call, and of course some of the guys I said, I'm never going to give up WA7IVO. I don't know. Well, I did, and boy did I get crap for that. You told me you were never going to get rid of that call. Well, so I lied. All right. Anyway, my first knowledge of the radio club of Tacoma was through some other hams that I had met on the air. I had met 3 hams. They all went to Curtis High School. Omar Haugen, WA7HPK. Now, I don't know what these guys' calls are now. Scott Bogue, WN7IYZ. I was IVO. And Larry Ziegler, WN7JPC, who had just passed as general when I met him. And they were all from Curtis High School. And they said, well, why don't you come down to the radio club? And I went, there's a radio club? Yeah, come on down to the radio club. Yeah, because those 3 had started kind of a youth type deal, and they needed another youth. They actually needed a lot more utes. But anyway, JPC and IYZ and such, we used to pal around and do stuff, you know. And it got to be summertime. I got my ticket in '67. December 2nd was my first QSO, and it was probably summertime '68. And I wanted to go out and do a field day, and I had never done a field day. So I went down. I joined the radio club. That was one of those times when you had to have, a sponsor or two. I can't remember. I think so. And so anyway, I remember one or two of the guys sponsored me, and I joined the club, and then went out on a field day, and that was my first introduction to the radio club at Tacoma and to field day. And boy, I'll tell you, some of those guys are real characters. A lot of the old timers. Dick Ryan was one of the guys. W7RGD, rugged RGD. Jerry Seligman was kind of an earlier old timer, and W7BUN, Baker Uncle Nancy. We also had the Devishes, Roy and Ethel Devish, and Roy was the cook. Roy was the cook, and he was the head superintendent down at the Tacoma City Building. And I mean superintendent, I'm talking janitor, but he ran the whole place and was a head of all of the janitors down there. And oh gosh, there's a ton of them. Got to know them, and they're all gone now. Everybody's gone, but I sure, as a teenage kid, was quite influenced by these people. It was great. And at that time, the club had a ladies' auxiliary, which they don't do anymore, and all kinds of stuff. Every Friday night was pinochle. If you were lucky and got to know Dick Ryan well enough, Dick was a dispatcher for State Patrol. And if you got to know Dick well enough, you got to ride in the civil defense bus when they take it out every couple of weeks. And the civil defense bus was a radio bus, a standard city bus, with all the seats taken out and cubbies put into it, where the city Tacoma Water Division, the police department, city light, they all had their cubbies with their radios in them. Now, if you want to talk about a porcupine with all of those antennas on top of that bus, it was pretty cool. The ham guys at this time, with the Races and ARES, they had two cubbies. One was HF and one was VHF. And the VHF one didn't have radios like we have today. These were mobile radios that were taken out of buses or cars or buses, or big professional mobile radios. And I think they were tube too. I think they were running Motorola tube stuff. But it was a lot of fun riding around in that bus with Dick and that sort of thing. What else can I tell you? Gosh, there's so much. The clubhouse, when I first went there, was a shack, and there was the upstairs was not finished like it is today, and I had a lot to do with that. My father did too. My father subsequently got his ham ticket after going to take some classes at the Tacoma Folk School with Jerry Seligman, used to teach down there. And he got his novice license. He was WN7RWK. And the one thing I can remember about, well, tons of things I can remember about him, but can I swear in these? Okay, all right. My father went in to do his first contact, and he had a pretty damn nice setup in there, because I was a general, or I was an advanced class. I had everything that he needed, including a tower and beam, so on and so forth. So he got on 80 meters to have his first contact. And actually I was his first contact, but to have his real first contact. And when you do that, you sweat, and the sweat's running, and whew, you cannot describe what it's like. Anyway, he goes in the ham shack, and I'm sitting, I'm watching TV on the other in the playroom, and he comes out of the ham shack, which was my bedroom also. He comes out of the ham shack, and I said, I said, "Hey, Dad, how did you do?" And he's got his paper in his hand, his copy, and he says, "I didn't copy a goddamn thing," and threw the paper down. Now, my father was a very, very devout, practicing Catholic. And to hear that come out of his mouth just floored me. It's like, well, show me your paper, Dad. What did you copy? And I looked. I says, "Give me a pencil, Dad." He gives me a pencil. I look at the paper. I'm going, whoosh, 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 whoosh. He had copied everything perfectly. It's just it was all one string. And I'm, to think back about, that was a no big deal back then, but now it's like huge. But anyway, so he had copied it perfectly, and I just put the slices in between. It was great. But my father then got interested in the radio club and was also very hands-on and doing things down there. And myself, another good friend of mine who's now a silent key, Kent Hoffman, who is a type 1 diabetic from way, way, way back. And he says, "Nick," he says, "I'm not going to live past 40. And he didn't. But anyway, myself, Kent, a couple other people, Janet Pagents, who is now Janet Margelli, Chip Margelli, K7JA, Silent Keys, his wife. And anyway, we all went down there, and we took the chimney out, put an electric furnace in, took the chimney out, and then just started to fabricate the rooms, sheetrock them, shim the sheetrock, because back in 1912 when that place was built, 2x4s were real 2x4s. And these 2x4s were not kiln dried. And they were, so, but if you go down to the clubhouse and look down one of those walls in the operating room or in the museum, they're straight as hell. And the reason why is because there's shims all over the place.
What was the heat before you put in the electric heat?
It was an oil burner, a real pain in the ass oil burner. Now we had Ralph Rawlings, W7COP, was from Western Furnace, which is now gone, but Ralph was the furnace guy, and he was always over there getting that damn thing going. And when we moved to the electric furnace, we had to put a new electrical service in, and we all did that all hands-on by ourselves. I did a lot of the electrical service.
Do you remember when the smoke exhaust fan was installed?
Yes, my father installed that.
Tell us about that.
Well, I'll tell you what. If you went to a club meeting there, you could be a good candidate for secondhand smoke cancer, because it was blue in there. All of these guys smoked, and it was just blue. My father put the exhaust fan in the back of the clubhouse. The only problem is that during the club meeting it was too noisy. But boy, that place, we'd come home smelling like we'd been in a bar all night long, just cigarettes after cigarettes. And I remember when I joined, the secretary was Bob Waitman, WA7IPR. Bob worked for the city of Tacoma. He was an electrical inspector. But Bob smoked a pipe. And he would read the minutes. And as he would read the minutes, that pipe was just going. And it was... Some of these memories I have are just fun. Anyway.
So tell us, Nick, what do you see for the future of ham radio?
That's tough. I personally think that ham radio is being dumbed down. And that a lot of that goes to the fact that we don't have that novice license anymore. We don't have to learn the code anymore. And that's probably one of the biggest things that I have a problem with is extra class licensees that don't know anything. They take the test. If you're a good memorizer, you can pass that test, but they don't know anything. So I've had an extra class guy say, "How do I build a dipole antenna?" Well, I went down to so-and-so and I paid $95 for a dipole. What? Let's go to Home Depot and buy some wire, and I'll show you how to make a dipole, within 20 minutes, and how to string it out, how to measure it, how to resonate it, all that sort of thing. And everybody's buying stuff. So
You think there's a long-term future?
that kind of scares me too, because of the dumbing down of it. I don't know. I hope so. I really do. I really do. I hope so. And if not, then I grew up in the heyday of it, or kind of on the tail end of it. But I don't know. But
You have to admit, though, you have done some FT8 contacts very successfully.
oh, let's not talk about that. Well, yes, I have done FT8 because that's the only place anybody's at. And that really bothers me because here are our WARC people, the people that assign frequencies and take frequencies away, will go look at that and say, well, you guys are on FT8 and we don't hear anything on any other of your frequencies. So, hey, FT8's all you're going to get. We're going to take that away from you. We're going to take all those frequencies away. And that kind of bothers me. But
Well, is there anything you'd like to say in closing to your audience?
keep it up. Learn the code. A lot of people are learning the code because they don't have to. Learn the code. Get on CW, and for God's sakes, get an general or extra class license. You don't get stuck on a repeater. I was a repeater guy for the club for many years, and everybody would all be ticked off because the repeater was off the air. Well, you got to know that there's a knob on your radio, and you could turn that. And when the repeater's off the air, your whole neighborhood is gone. You've got to venture out. Don't be afraid to get on the air and call CQ. Don't be afraid. Just get out and just do it and get the rate up.
All right, Nick. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. You did really well. Thanks very much.
You're welcome. Anytime. So we'll do part 2.